If you saw our previous hand review with High Stakes Pro Alex, you're going to love today's episode. We have more hands from 500, 1k and 2k NL. We have triple barrels. We have river check raises. All kinds of reg versus reg madness at High Stakes. I think you're going to love it. If you like our stuff, it's carrotcorner.com for all of the other content. But in the meantime, enjoy this hand review video. Let's go. Welcome back to the channel, guys, and a warm return welcome to High Stakes Pro Alex, who is here to go over more hands from the depths of 1k NL, 2k NL, 500 NL. Who knows what we're going to see in this episode. If you didn't see the last video, I definitely recommend you go back and check it out. It was absolutely awesome. And in this one, we're going to do the same again. So we have 7-8 of diamonds to kick things off here, Alex. We're on the button. We have gone for... Ooh, the 4x 3-bet, a little bit larger than is standard in this spot, but we are 200 big blinds deep. Is that factoring into your decision making here?
That is what factors in. And I also have studied zero deep play, so I actually don't even know what the preflop sizing is supposed to be. Honestly, I think it probably is supposed to be bigger than this.
Yeah, you're definitely a man after my own heart. I mean, you don't like the GTO nerd frequency obsessed approach. You've taken all of the carrot poker skill. And you've neglected deep. You're basically just me. So yeah, this is great to hear. Neither of us can sort of outdo the other one then, because I'm also kind of a fish deep. It's definitely an area that I've neglected.
All right. And I remember how this hand goes, so we're going to get a little off script, potentially.
Okay. So this gets 4-bet.
Large 4-bet.
It is big, yeah. I guess Villain's also reacting to the stack depth here. I'm
guessing...
And I think
also possibly supposed to be bigger as well. I don't know.
Possibly. Who knows? We'll never know. We know nothing about deep. Could be good, could be terrible. 7-8 though seems like a call. If anything is a call, then it would be hands like this and pocket pairs and that sort of thing, and not king queen off. What I'd have to say about defending against 4-bets. So peeling it looks good. You're more live than you are with most hands, and yeah, seems good for the price. I don't know if being deep, I wouldn't say it hurts this hand, but it's the kind of thing when you make a flush. I guess when you're in a 4-bet pot, a flush is the flush is the flush, and like being deep, it's still okay. But there's probably a stack depth that we can reach here where 8 high flushes start to feel gross, like when pots get big. And maybe that's deeper than 200 big blinds, but it does exist, right, somewhere.
There's an SPR where the 8 high flush is going to feel gross.
Good correction.
And maybe there's a range that you could be up against that's filled with big suited cards that make your 8 high flush feel gross. But I think even in these deep 4-bet pots, the SPR is going to be low enough that we're going to be happy anytime we have a flush.
Yep, so we'd have to be multiple 100 big blinds deep for that to factor in a 4-bet pot. But in a 3-bet pot, you could be 200 big blinds deep now, and then a flush starts to degrade there a lot more. Just like in a single raise pot, your flush degrades at 100 big blinds, right, in many cases. So SPR is everything, like we talked about in the last video. You're right to point that out. Okay, so Villain goes for small bet here. I guess we just always call. Reopening here seems like an absolute crime with this hand. Any objection?
Yeah, like I prefer call, but that might just be me being like a bit of a scared player this deep. Because like reopening to me doesn't seem that bad. Like we're going to have some strong hands that are going to benefit from pumping money into this pot on such a wet board. I think equities are running fairly close together, so that's going to push us towards, that's going to incentivize us to start getting money in now with our strong hands. So I don't know, but we are in position, and the SPR is not that big, so maybe we don't need to rush pot growth that much. I don't know. Call is definitely fine. Raise maybe is not a thing, so I think I went with call.
The reason I don't think raise is a thing for this specific hand, like I think raise could be a thing in this spot in general, but for this specific hand, I feel like we have what I'd refer to as like the danger zone level of equity, where when we reopen and get jammed on, it's like a really sad crying call off or like really torturous fold, and that our equity, like our EV really plummets. We have 2 gut shots here, you know, like we can hit the 6 or the 10, just for anyone that's watching this thinking we only have 1. And so this is just this sort of equity band I never want to reopen with. Like I'm fine reopening with a worse bluff than this, and I'm fine reopening with like a better raise call sort of bluff than this, but I don't think I'm okay opening with 7-8 specifically.
Yeah, good point.
So we call. The turn is a 9. Villain goes for 3rd pot, or just under half pot, I guess. Calling again, or any? You ever playing jam here? Or you just playing call only?
Well, I don't know. I mean, we're deep and I don't really know what we're doing, but I see the middle card pair and I'm like, I've got some of that and probably more than him. So if I jam, he might just get scared and think I have a 9. And, you know, I think if you jam here, he doesn't have like any hands in his range that are happy with the exception of like jacks. And even like jacks preflop, just like making it 30 big blinds is like a little bit questionable. Like, so I think we're against like an air hand that's going to fold. Like, I mean, maybe not perfectly air, because like a lot of his
Mm,
air is going to have like ace high showdown value that's kind of like merge betting right now. But yeah, that stuff's going to fold. And that's obviously great. And then we're going to have some stuff like queens, kings, and aces that's hating life. We're going to have some flush draws that are hating life.
yeah, I've got conflicting thoughts here. Like, on the one hand, I agree with you that queens, kings, and aces are not happy. I'm kind of questioning how often I think they're going to fold here, though. And I don't know, something's telling me that this is just like not going to be like a super folded spot. I feel like it might be one of the spots where even though the human is feeling like gross about it, it's still like very difficult to execute a fold with like kings in this situation. So I feel like it might not be great, like the fold equity against that region, but I could be wrong. And then I'm wondering like, well, are people over bluffing right now? I feel like there's a real propensity. And this is largely driven by like mass data schools and coaching for profit schemes that have like dug into 4-bet pots and basically found that like fold equity is quite good against the unsuspecting victim, shall we say. So I'm kind of wondering whether like the regs in this pool might be over bluffing the average 4-bet pot. Don't know if that still holds true deep. I have no idea, but it's the factor, right? Like if we do just call here, do we miss out on like our classic mandatory river bluff that's winning because villain just follows through too often? That's kind of like bad given that we miss most rivers. And then is villain just over bluffing the turn and therefore like we're just jamming and getting folds from so much king 10 and king queen here that it's amazing. So yeah, I think you've convinced me that it's at least something to consider here. I don't think it's a play I would have made in game, but I can see the merit.
I think one thing that militates in favor of the jam is just how deep we are, because I think that's going to make it a lot more likely that the villain's going to fold a strong hand like aces, kings, or queens. And just thinking like, ah, geez, like now he's got some 9x that we're basically dead to, and he had jacks would never jam. Jacks would be would be the worst jam ever. But like,
I'm not even
but
sure. Sorry, I was just gonna say I'm not even sure 9x is like a sensible jam in theory either, because at these SPRs with hands as good as trips, I think you do just see like a ton of slow playing here, because villain doesn't have a ton of really high equity draws. They have a few high equity draws, but the majority of villain's bluffing range here is like gutter at best. So I don't even think you would see much raise being played here at all. In equilibrium, you might see a little bit.
Absolutely, yeah, 100%. Yeah. So this honestly was just kind of like a street poker jam, and hope you fold a big hand.
I love street poker. It's just so liberating. Like I remember when I fully started to like come out of the GTO cocoon, it was like being in like one of those what they called cryogenic like freezing things that put you to sleep when you go on like a big space voyage for 30 years. I was like coming out of one of them for like the first time and seeing a new planet, and like, but it was still the old planet that I used to think in when I played street poker back in the day, man. I went into such a cocoon when I made Carrot Poker School. You'll be aware yourself that it's a very theory-driven course, and you can lose the fun of the game if you get too blinded by theory. Theory's great, like it strengthens your game, but you can actually stop enjoying poker as much, and that can stunt your development, I think. So I love street poker. I think it's a great idea.
Well, hopefully we get it through.
Nice. Yeah, I do think people are over bluffing this node, and I do think that like they may over triple as well, so I can see a lot more merit to this than before. Cool. Interesting spot. All right, ace jack offsuit now. We go for the open here. By the way, guys, if you're enjoying this content with High Stakes Alex, I've decided that's what you're called. You're now going to be High Stakes Alex. Do smash the like button, leave us a comment. Let us know if you want Alex to come back onto the channel, if you like him, you know, if you think he's good at poker and you like listening to him. Let us know. We can get him back on the channel. If you think he's just a huge fraud and a scammer and you never want to see him again, also let us know in the comments. Don't worry, Alex. Anyone that says that, we're going to ban them. It's a trap. I'm laying a trap there.
No, I want to know if they think I'm a scammer.
Lots of people think you're a scammer. Poker's a very paranoid place, you know, that's the way it goes.
True.
In fact, it's an insult. If there's no one that thinks you're a scammer, you're definitely doing something wrong. You're not successful enough. You have to be suspected as being a scammer by someone.
And then bring on the scam comments, everyone.
Yep. Come at us, bros.
All right.
So we have a blind versus blind spot. Third pot. Call. Overbet turn. Yeah, so this must be approaching the bottom of the value region, right?
Yeah, I'd say it's like at the bottom.
Yeah. I mean...
Welcome.
Check,
what are we doing now?
I mean, my instinct says check strongly. Like my street poker instinct is like check call. And the reason for that is...
Good rag here, by the way.
So yeah, I think my instinct is check call. Like that's my first thought, and that comes from street poker. That's like my old brain that was like good at street poker merging with my new brain that's becoming obsessed with street poker again. And the reason I'm going down that road is that, well, one, value betting would be incredibly weird and thin, and like villain is probably like mainly just calling all river bets with like an ace-x heavy range, so it feels super thin. If we were to bet river for value here, we'd have to go like fifth pot. We'd have to feather, I think, using like the grade 3 lingo of CPS. Feathering just means in the course betting like 20% of the pot or less. And if we check, I wonder whether there are way too many hands that are actually double gutter, like Jack 10 off reaching this spot. I know we blocked some of them. Diamonds, gutter, I wonder if it could get overbluffed, because my initial thought is that villain's landing range does not contain very many obvious value bets once we check the river here that beat ace-jack, yet it will be super hard to get called by worse hands if we bet. Therefore, the street poker way to exploit here and capitalize is just to check call and hope that there's an overbluff going on, and I think that's kind of likely. So that's my thought process.
Okay. Yeah, I think that's a respectable thought process, and I differed from it in the following respect. I thought we were chopping a large fraction of the time. And I think we're losing. And I think what was crucially in my head during this was that we were losing almost never.
Yep, I agree with
Okay,
that.
so yeah, he'd have to have backdoored like ace-7 or something, or like 8-7 or like something weird. And yeah, like offsuit combos, not getting in here necessarily at full frequency. So when, yes, and there's only one suited combo. And then, yeah, like ace-7, he's got like one suited combo and maybe a handful of offsuit combos. So like 3-betting at some frequency as well. So he loses them to that range. Anyway, I think we're losing incredibly infrequently. And I think we're chopping a lot. And then occasionally he's got like something that would bluff, but like maybe not that often because he'd have to have something that was like a high equity air hand on the turn. And then if he's like, I don't know what theory recommends you bluff here in this spot if you check. Maybe you are supposed to bluff some like king X. So I don't trust him to do that. So anyway, I thought I'm going to try and get him to fold a chop. And I, did what you'll see if you click forward.
Yep. I figured out. As soon as you started talking there, I figured out exactly what you were going to do. No, I don't think he's meant to bluff king X if you check. I think there's enough. Like whenever you overbet the turn, remember like a load of your opponent's calling range is a flush draw. And like a lot of that blind versus blind could just be some backdoor floaty hand. But I take your point. Unlike an ace-king high board, there aren't that many obvious combos of diamond-diamond that can actually continue on the flop, because like, can you call like the 6-4 of diamonds on the flop? I guess you do, but you also raise it a lot. And then like, yes, there's jack 10, queen 10, but other than that, there aren't that many hands calling turns.
Yeah,
so I kind of take
that was
point.
dumb. I missed that there was, there's a backdoor flush draw. Yeah, never mind. So there are actually more air hands than I gave credit for.
Right.
And yeah, you're not going to have to dip into king X because it's not like he's got much value here anyway, given that my range was so polar on the turn. Like his value range on the river has to be beating my polarization on the turn, and there's like just very few and far between. So yeah, that was stupid. No shot we're having to dip into our king X combos. But okay,
cool.
I've got like a ton of credible stuff for value, like ace king and pocket kings,
7x
like
as well. You can
pocket eights.
Buff that.
Yep. 7x gets here occasionally, and then we'll have pocket eights and 8-7 and shit. So I thought getting it through a lot. So losing almost never. I'm all in.
It's super interesting. Like, I love how you've gone for the fold equity against the chop, whereas like I've just been like trying to prey upon all of the air that's going to bluff, but we've each accepted the same premises. We've just gone to different conclusions. Like each of us have accepted that we basically lose almost never, and that it's very hard to value bet and get called by a worse hand. That led me to want to like quote unquote target the air hands, where it's led you to quote unquote target the folds against the chop. Now there are way more of the hands you're quote unquote targeting than the hands I'm targeting. I'm never going to be forgiven by the audience for using this word over and over. Just to be clear, guys, that word is dangerous if used incorrectly. There is a sense in which good players do use it correctly. But yeah, there are way more combos, Alex, that we could fold off a chop here than ones we could get to bluff. And we're not making as much money, because if we fold someone off a chop, we're making like half of this pot. Whereas if we get someone to bluff, we're making more than that. So that's weird, right? Like if we get someone to bluff, we're probably making like 3/4 of the pot on average when that happens. And when we get them off the chop, we're making half the pot. But then again, there are way more hands we could get off a chop than hands that could bluff. So it's a bit of a minefield. But yeah, I think your approach is way more viable than I first thought, and I didn't give this due credence, so fair enough. When it works. Well, maybe he just folded, the jack 9 of diamonds, and, check would have been great. Or maybe he folded an ace, in which case this was awesome.
He might have folded ace-8. Like, lose to ace-8.
Really awesome. Wow.
I don't know.
I love your optimism. You're very optimistic about your fold equity.
It's really scary. I just like bet 3x pot in a spot where I've got like ace king, pocket kings, and shit, like a bunch of boats, random stuff too. 7x. No.
Yep. I was just teaching a student this morning, and we were going through like the list of factors that make bluffing good against humans. So I've actually just pulled it up. You can see this, but the audience can't. It's called Elements of Bluffing. I can make this quite relatable to a student, even if they're at a low level, because the elements of bluffing that we talk about: 1, believability. Like, how believable is your line? Like, how credibly do you rep like a decent amount of value combos? 2, terror inflicting, which is what you were just talking about. Like, how much terror or discomfort do you inflict upon the opponent with a line? That's just going to cause like loads of hands to fold en masse. And then 3, does villain have a capped absolute range? Like, meaning that they can't have absolute hand strengths above a certain cutoff point, like ace X here or ace 8 here, I guess. So I think all of these things score really highly in this spot. Therefore, like, add that to the impunity of you can't really lose. And yeah, trying to get someone off a chop here is a really cool idea. I need to open my mind to that because I definitely forget that getting people off a chop is a thing. I just have a blind spot for it. But I do actually like this after our discussion.
Yeah, and like I think the reasoning that I put forth in that hand, if you accept it, would lead you to the conclusion that you should just be like all in with range on this spot, possibly.
Yeah, I think that's fair.
Because like the only advantage that like Ace Jack has over, actually, I guess that's not true. Because what I was thinking was like, okay, I don't care about the blockers of Ace Jack, but actually, Ace Jack has the massive advantage of not losing when you get called all the time. So yeah, actually, never mind. So yeah, your bluffs, Ace Jack is doing a ton better as a bluff than your like air bluffs. Never mind. Yeah.
It's like a free roll bluff, right? Which is why it's so great. That's why the idea of getting someone off a chop is actually just so incredibly powerful here, because there's like there's no downside. Like say you did this with, okay, you never have a king here because you overbet the turn, but say you did this with like air, right? You did this with queen high. Maybe it's still good, but it can never be anywhere near as good as doing it with ace jack in terms of absolute EV. But then again, the EV of checking queen high is garbage and the EV of checking this hand is really good. So you have to compare it to that. So it becomes a bit of a minefield. But yeah, we could talk about this one spot all day. This is super fascinating. But this is YouTube. And if people are still watching, we really appreciate it. I know we spent 17 minutes on a hand or something. Not quite. We spent maybe like 12 minutes on this hand. But yeah, we'll press on, guys. We'll get to another one. 1250. Call. Ace king 5. Yep, this is the classic overbet texture. Villain calls. What's going on here, guys, is that villain struggles to make 2-pair of sets on ace king 5, which is why you see in position use more overbets than you would on like ace 6 5, where there's way more 2-pair in sets and it would be a smaller sizing. 9 of hearts turn. We go for overbet again here, which looks like the sizing. In theory, seems fine. Ooh. And then I love these hands that you brought. You've brought a really spicy flavor of hand to these videos, so this is great. We'll need to do this again sometime. What would you say to someone who claimed to have showdown value now and wanted to check behind?
I would say they aren't thinking hard enough about what villain's range contains, because against that range, it's clear that you have 0 equity.
Good. So that's a liberating starting point, right? So when you can reach a point where you say, I have 0% equity here, or at least like close enough to 0 that we can treat it as 0, that unlocks the door to, well, how are my blockers? How is my fold equity? Do I think this is overfolded or underfolded? I mean, it's kind of hard for you to have missed now. I guess like in cutoff, you still have like 6, 7, 7, 8 suited. But other than that, you've not actually whiffed with anything, right? Like everything else has got there. You have the monopoly on like queen jack. Flush draws you also have a massive monopoly on, for the simple reason that villain, well, can't call the 7-4 of spades again on the turn to your sizing. It's not profitable. It's not allowed. So this is an incredible river for your range. You've got like the nut blocker. You block 2-pair and you block the nut flush. This is like all in, right? Surely.
Let's see if I got it.
3, 2, 1. Easy. I knew you'd got it. Like there was no question in my mind there. No one brings a hand.
I know. You could never bring this as a check back.
that they watch and want to be on, where it's like, look at me wimping out in the most obvious cool river bluff spot ever. You would never bring that hand.
No, never. I'm sure there's like 1 million of those hands in my database and you'll never see them.
Nah, they probably don't exist. Not in this spot. Villain calls and shows his ace 5, and yeah, what are you gonna do? You know, it can't always work. I don't even know like how good this call is, to be honest. I mean, ace 5 is a bluff catcher.
Yeah, like possibly a bad-ish one.
Certainly not a good one, because like 5x could be one of your bluff combos here.
Yeah, and like pocket 5s is like not even love and life for value so much on this. I mean, because he's gonna show up here with a flush. Like sometimes they'll have like 5x. Yeah, like 5x of spades, like very natural first line. So yeah, and then like I don't know, there'll be the occasional I don't know, something that beats pocket 5s somehow. I don't know, like pocket 9s or something.
Yeah, so this is definitely like really disappointing and unfortunate and annoying. Like villain could easily have folded this hand, but still, I think this is a great play. I think this is an overfolded node. If you list the bluffing variables again, believability, I mean, it's ridiculously believable. Like all of your shit just got there. Terror inflicting 100%, like you can't be happy with ace 5 here whatsoever. Capped absolute villain range, yeah, kind of. Like, okay, it can have a flush in it every now and then, but there are no straights and most of the hands are still just 1-pair or 2-pair. And I think a lot of that 1-pair, 2-pair is just going to be folding now. So I really like this play. I think this is a great example of being texturally aware enough to know when your hand bluffs because it has the right properties to bluff, and the showdown value is a mirage that's not real. So you don't check back to realize something that doesn't actually exist.
My main thing in this spot is just when it's really hard for you to be bluffing and you have a weak hand, you have to bluff. It's as simple as that. And this is just a paradigmatic case of a board that's really hard to be bluffing on. Where the pre-flop opener, there are 3 Broadways on the board, plus a 9. 9 kind of counts as a Broadway.
I love that, yep.
Yeah. And then the flush got there on the river after we just overbet. So, and a straight got there. So it's just like everything gets there. Scariest board ever. Big cards. Just be all in when you don't have a good hand. When you have a bad hand.
When your range is strong and your hand is weak, you're all in. There's probably something that rhymes with weak there that makes a better rhyme. When your range is strong, but your hand is weak, bluffing is the play you should seek. There we go. Done. Can retire from poker now that I made that rhyme. King 10. Okay. We see bet flop against big blind. Big blind calls.
I like that you aren't stopping at these c-bet decisions. Because the c-bet decisions are like so irrelevant.
I just hate the flop. As a street, the flop is just like, okay, when you're against the fish, the flop is interesting. Because fish play flop so badly that you can exploit the hell out of them right away on the flop by playing like the most unbalanced strategy imaginable. But against the reg, the flop is like the stupidest street to even care about. In Carrot Poker School, we spend a grand total of like 0 time on flop c-betting. I think. There's like very little flop c-bet stuff in Carrot Poker School. We maybe have 1 episode on it in grade 1, but there we're trying to like teach broader themes. So you might have noticed that when you were going through the course. It's just something I just don't care about at all, ever.
Yeah, and good poker players shouldn't care about it nearly as much as they do.
I always love it when someone's like, oh yeah, man, I've been studying like the aggregate reports and I've learned like what textures the solver likes all these like slightly different bet sizes on. I'm just like, what a massive waste of your fucking time. Like, could you do anything more pointless with your poker study time? That's going to offend someone, but
yeah, I mean, there are going to be exceptions to anything as strongly worded as that, and I think there are.
Yeah.
Like there are spots where you want to learn like where you have to range bet or something like that, like where your range is strong enough that becomes mandatory, because that allows you to simplify the tree, which is really important. And then another thing is like, it can be good to learn the solver's preferred sizing, because the solver is going to make its recommendations on later streets, assuming that preferred sizing. And it might be easier to follow those recommendations if you've already implemented the flop sizing into your game. But yeah, it's really not as big a deal as people make it out to be.
Yeah, you've done a very good job of like de-YouTubing my really dramatic statement there. I'll need to teach you the ways of YouTube. You just say things that are huge exaggerations and hope that people accept it. That's generally how it goes. But yeah, you're right. I was definitely being I was exaggerating.
I mean, I agree 100% with the spirit of everything you said, like easily. Flop c-bet, just stop. Don't worry about it.
Appreciate it. All right, Queen of Hearts turn. And we go for check, which seems normal with this hand class. River is the 8 of clubs. Villain checks again. So I'd imagine, how does this get spicy? Like, you bet, I'm going to predict you haven't seen this hand. You bet for value, villain check raises inevitably, and you turn your hand into a rejam and bluff. That's my prediction. I've not seen this hand. That's my prediction of how this is going to go. It's going to be something crazy like that. Okay, so far, so good.
Not that good.
Okay, so maybe we're not going to rejam bluff, but what are your thoughts here? So like the check raise on this river. Maybe.
I think we've got a terrific bluff catcher in a horrible bluff catching spot.
Yeah, 100% agree. Let's just unpack that a bit. Terrific bluff catcher, meaning we block a straight, we unblock bluffs for the most part. We have the king, we block 2 pair. Horrible bluff catching spot, meaning you just got check raised on straight completing turn, where villain's range filtered on flop, so you really don't have a lot of air landing in this situation. Or many of the hands that would raise here are just so happy flicking in a call. That's one thing that's disturbing me about this.
I agree. And I agree especially with your emphasis on the first red flag here that should be popping out to everyone is that like guy called a flop c-bet. Okay, like that's going to weight his range massively towards stuff that has a piece of the board by the end of the hand here. Mm-hmm. And stuff that has a piece of the board tends to like most naturally play as either a call or a fold. People don't like to just like have a piece of the board and then throw a bunch of money in and then possibly feel like an idiot when they get looked up. Mm-hmm. But the good players will do that, and you don't want to let them start running you over. So,
and as you've said before, like this is 2KNL, you know, the regs are no joke. They're probably capable of getting to this river with a hand that could call. That's something like, I don't know, Queen 10, but then they're saying, well, this is definitely one of the races the solver goes for in this spot. Like, if it's not this combo, what else is it? And I rolled a 17. A lot of regs are rolling between calling and raising here with hands like that, no doubt.
Totally ridiculous. Don't ever do that. That's the stupidest thing I've ever heard in my life. Like, rolling at any point in the hand after pre-flop, I'm convinced, is just like makes your game worse.
Me too. And I used to do
it. Don't do it. It's a crutch. It gets you focusing on things that are irrelevant instead of relevant.
And in some sense, that's a comfort blanket to people, because thinking about the relevant things is super hard. So just being able to say, well, here's a nice easy thing. I click a button, I get a number, I get an answer. It's like you've got a cheat sheet, only it's not. Yeah. It's like you're rolling a magic 8-ball. So what you're effectively doing if you're RNGing the river, I think this needs to be like a meme, right? You know those memes where it's like what I feel like I'm doing and then what I'm actually doing, and it's like a split screen? I feel like what I feel like I'm doing is like some Einsteinian equations sort of meme, and then what I'm actually doing is like a bozo like shaking a magic 8-ball. Like I think that's what's happening.
And people will say, well, but isn't it important to replicate GTO frequencies so they aren't exploitable? Okay, a couple points. Number one, you can't. You have no idea how to use the RNG to replicate GTO frequencies. So don't pretend like you can. Number two, even if you could, it's not clear that it would be desirable to do so, because these post-flop, and especially in these river spots, they're not high visibility spots. Like you're never going to get exploited for this kind of stuff. It's like people's strategies in these spots evolve much faster than like you can even collect data to figure out what those strategies are on the other regs. Yep. And then even like you're never stop. No one's looking at what the other reg is doing on the river in like a call spot. Okay, like or in like a river raise call spot. Okay, just shut up. You're not replicating GTO. It's not even good to do it.
This is like the point where you need to look at the camera and tell them they don't deserve to play the game. Like this is the kind of vibe that's going on right now. This is eerie. This is like I'm the one making this comment right now.
I think if you RNG this spot, you don't deserve to play the game.
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, I don't need to say any more because this is all stuff that I say all the time. But yeah, I was there, man. You know, I'll just maybe respond to that by saying I used to be a guy that RNG'd way too much. And part of that was because of some weird devotion to the theory and trying to be a purist. And I kind of knew it wasn't the right thing to do. But equally, it was being used as a cop-out and a crutch in certain cases. So yeah, I've been there and it's a really easy trap to fall into. And yeah, I agree with everything you said.
Absolutely.
Okay. So back to this hand. Do we want to call here if this is a good reg? This is probably the combo to look them up with. I think 3-bet jam. When I think about 3-bet jamming this river, like I know the solver will probably do it with a few bluff combos, but I just feel like it might be awful against humans. Like it might just be absolutely terrible compared to like call. I guess what I want to say is that if we think call is good, then it's better than 3-bet jam just because villain does just have uber nuts in his range here at like a decent frequency. Like what does he do with 10-9 if you jam here? Like is he meant to fold 10-9? Does that become a bluff catcher?
I think so.
I think so. Like you're just saying you have ace-10 if you jam?
I mean, maybe it becomes a value chopper.
Maybe. At best.
Yeah.
This is so weird having someone on my channel who's literally, I don't know, you just feel like you're the carrot poker school. Like you were made by an AI, like an AI made a human that was the embodiment of the carrot poker school. Because you have all the terms and jargon down and you just sound like the school. That's great. Value chopper is a good term. So we did go for the call. We did run into the 10-9. Any regrets with this one, or do you feel like it's just...
Yes, I think I should have folded.
Yeah. Right. Talk us through why you want to take a hand with good blockers and blah, 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 and what is it that makes you want to fold? Is it that landing range? Is it the fact that like there just isn't much natural air to bluff with in this spot? And is it the fact that you expect people just to call the hands that would bluff? Or is there something to add to that?
It's a combination of the two things that influence how often people bluff, which is the landing range and their willingness to pull the trigger, that is. So I think they both point in the same direction in this case. Landing range is not conducive to bluffs. Like there's no eye-grabbing air hands that have just missed their draw on the river and now need to follow through to win the pot or anything like that. It's like you've got like a pair. And then, yeah, willingness after you're facing like a big bet on the river. Yeah, I mean, people don't like to repolarize and just shove it in. I mean, This wasn't a shove, but so yeah, so those two things I think are very strong considerations in favor of folding. Meanwhile, the blocker properties of my hand tell in favor of calling, but only weakly, because blockers can only ever weakly tell in favor of anything in these kind of wide range spots.
Yeah, exactly. So there are times when a blocker property might be responsible for a 10% EV pot size swing, but that would be more like a 4 straight, 3 flush, like something extreme, right? In a situation like this where there's 5 unpaired cards and no flush possible, you're never going to have a blocker swing that's more than a few percent of the pot. And we talk about that a lot in Grade E. And we talk about that at the start of Grade E because I really want to make it clear to people that there is a big reason to do MDA stuff, to do exploitative stuff and learn how things are actually played by populations. Yep, agree with all of that. I think fold looks pretty sensible. And another thing people might say here would be, well, if you're folding this hand, then you're folding blah, blah, blah percent. And that's to miss the forest with the trees. That's to basically go back to prioritizing frequencies and your own range and your own strategy instead of maximizing EV. Play your hand in a vacuum. Don't RNG. Just figure out the spot. Absolutely. Well, Alex, this has been a pleasure, and we will definitely get you back on Carrot Corner in the future because I think people are going to love this. Obviously, Not had any feedback yet because we're recording these like before any of them have come out, but pretty sure this is going to go down well. And remember, guys, if you want Alex back, do hit the like button. I do look at these metrics. It really helps me see which videos are popular, and do leave a comment as well if you'd like to see more of this show. Let us know what you think. Anything to add, Alex? What are you going to do now? You're going to go play some more poker?
No, I'm going to go to bed. It's like 6 a.m. here in the Americas or something, so.
Yeah, a night of playing online poker, League of Legends, and recording poker content. Yeah, I think you've earned it.
A couple of these hands were in my most recent session. So yeah, I did finish a session today.
Aren't they just the funnest ones to review when you're literally just like fresh and the hands are still buzzing around your head? I love reviewing content when I've just played it.
Yeah.
Cool. All right, Alex, thanks again. And good luck in your grind. We'll get you back on the channel in the near future, guys. It's carrotcorner.com. If you want to do what Alex did and take the Carrot Poker School, you can find that and all of our other content over at Carrot Corner. And we'll see you soon. Take it easy.
Thanks for having me.